Welcome back to the Manage to Win podcast. I'm glad to have you here. Today's episode is sponsored by Habitly.com, where you can learn the habits of highly effective teams. So do you have some behaviors of your people that you'd like to see changed? Maybe they don't communicate well with others. Maybe they cause some drama. Maybe they struggle with time management. They don't show up on time. They don't deliver on time. There's a lot of things there on Habitly.com where you can really learn the habits of highly successful people individually, for new employees, for teams, for people who are on a performance improvement plan. These are important tools to help your people be their best. Today's episode is with Attram. He is an expert in joint ventures. He's going to walk us through his 6-step process. He is a great coach on joint ventures. He helps people grow their businesses quickly. It's very informative. You can gain a lot from this. Let's dive in. Mac, really glad to have you on the show. I have a question for you. I noticed that when you go into your background, you've written several books, you've got tremendous success. We want to talk about joint ventures, but it sounds like you also had to overcome some hardships or some difficulties. I don't know whether you want to start there or whether you want to dive into joint ventures. Where do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I think challenge is always good. So for me, when I started my first business 2 decades ago now, just over 2 decades ago, and it was a small computer internet services company, and there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, and what I started the business, and then I had 2 business partners who joined, and one said they're going to take responsibility for sales and marketing. The other one said they're going to, because they trained in computer installations and connections, they'll take charge of the operations. I thought, fabulous. I can just focus on running the business. I've got a sales and marketing person. What happened after about 2 years is I noticed they weren't really doing the role properly. And but yet I still wanted to grow the business. We had conversations. And then once the sales and marketing chap said, look, I've had enough. I'm leaving now. So now, David, I'm now taking on sales and marketing as well as okay. And shortly after, the operations manager now says, he just disappears. He disappears. I'm calling him. There's no answer. I go to his house. I'm knocking on the door. There is no answer. I'm asking friends, have you seen Tony? And they said yes. But I realized he's trying to avoid me. Now, what transpired when I looked at the books later, when I looked at the accounts, they had done some dodgy things and ordered a ton of stock and made some agreements which I wasn't aware of. Now I find myself in over $100,000 of personal debt. Money I've had to borrow to pay off these people and do. So I'm in a mess. Now, instead of having business partners doing specific things so I can focus on running a business, now I'm working 17, 18, 19 hours a day, little sleep, and I am stressed out. And can you imagine, David, at that time, I've only been married for a few short years, and now my wife's pregnant with our 2nd child. For me, it was the lowest point of my life. I am totally stressed out. I fall into this. What I know now was depression. What I know now was, and I remember one evening, whilst I was going through that, one evening driving home from my office, now 1.5 hours away. And David, 5 minutes from my home, I stopped in this shopping center mall car park. I for some reason that evening, I didn't want to get home. I didn't want to go home. A lot of stuff going through my mind. And as I sat there with my hands on the wheels, car was parked, I suddenly had this sense of, I'm such a failure. How did I get here where this is not what I wanted for my life? This is not what I wanted for my family. I'm a good guy. I was told to go to school, study hard. I've got an MBA. I work for some corporate companies. I've started my business. What went wrong? And it suddenly dawned on me there was a lot of stuff that I did not know. And sitting there sobbing, thinking, feeling sorry for myself, thinking I'm such a failure, suddenly realized that. And the question that comes to my mind is, how do successful people become successful? How do they become wealthy? How do they run successful businesses? Because I see the media, I see the news, this success. How? Because suddenly there was something I didn't know clearly. And as I got home that evening, it was all a blur. But the next morning, I think it was a case of, I've got to learn this. I've got, and I started reading books on entrepreneurialism, on wealth, on success. I started reading books and then going to workshops and attending teleseminars. Back in those days, we didn't have webinars, and these teleseminars, listening to things on success. And I'm so glad I did, because in less than 2 years, I was able to fix that business, pay off my debtors, and really sell. And then I focused on selling that business because it wasn't something I was enjoying anymore. So that was one of the biggest challenges I've had in business, people letting me down and things not going the way I'd planned or I envisioned. I hope that makes some sense.
Well, it's interesting, and I can relate to it because I wasn't in that exact same scenario, but I dove into business and also made mistakes because I didn't know what I didn't know. And when I had my big turning point in February 2003, the message I got was to teach people to avoid my mistakes. It wasn't because I was so smart. So I had to understand those mistakes better. I had to do what you did. I had to go out and learn. Okay, and I realized I had leadership attributes, but no skills. And so I had to learn, what is a leader? What are leadership systems? Because I realized I wasn't good with systems. But I think it's really powerful that you had that moment. And, you know, it's interesting that you kind of pulled over. You said you sobbed and you were really kind of feeling sorry for yourself. But you also, all this stuff, it sounds like, was just swirling. And you got some clarity out of that, it sounds like, and we're able to come out of that and start learning and growing and working through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, you know, very powerful, very powerful. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, you said something there. I mean, your incident was 2003. Mine was 2004, September 2004. So it's very, very visceral for me. And you said something about, I learned something through it. And you said you realized that you wanted to help, you learned leadership and you wanted to help other people. And so when I sold my business, suddenly I thought, what am I going to do now? I started investing in real estate and acquiring other businesses. But then I was still unfulfilled. And I was thinking, where's this coming from? And that's when I realized that there are people were asking me to help them with their business, and I helped them fix it. And I was doing that for free. I had no idea there was something called coaching. And when I realized that, I decided to make it my mission just to work with people. And I wrote this mission down, which was to inspire, educate, and empower people to live a life of joy, courage, passion, and purpose. And since 2005, 2006, that's what I've been doing, helping others to really live their full potential, just like you did with leadership, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because our timing is very similar, because I started doing this full time in late January 2006. So we were kind of across the globe, but doing similar things. One thing that strikes me interesting is that you had in this business major problems with partners, and yet one of the things you've come out with that it appears to be one of your strengths and kind of a unique thing is you now advise people on the value of doing joint ventures, whereas, you know, your first nightmare was a joint venture that went sour. And so it's kind of like, I love it because kind of like me with leader, I realized I wasn't a great leader, although I had, you know, I might look like it or had some attributes. And you kind of went, you didn't have a good joint venture. And then you figured out what makes a good one. So I want to learn more. I mean, what led you to that instead of running in the opposite direction and just saying, I'm not dealing with people anymore, I'm doing my own thing?
Yeah, it's a great thing. You know, everything, I believe everything happens for a reason. There's a purpose behind all this thing. And when I was going through my tribulations with these partners, and even with my staff and team as well, one of the things I've read later on and I learned later on was a principle that big organizations use and the army uses, which is what they call a code of honor. And a code of honor is simply a set of rules that govern the behavior of individuals on a team. I mean, you teach culture, you teach leadership, you know what I'm talking about. But those days, I had no clue why my team, my partners were behaving the way they were behaving. And clearly there were values that I had that they didn't have. There were values that I upheld that they didn't uphold. And so I was in this quagmire and this mess because of human beings. Left to my devices, I could have carried on running my business, but you can't grow a business, as you know, on your own to any significant level. So when I learned about Code of Honor, which is just a set of rules around values and working with people, I realized that any person who I'm going to work with now must agree to a certain level of certain values. And simple values such as being honest, being in integrity, being transparent, being on time, these simple things that affects actually the big results later on. And so going into joint ventures happened by accident. And I'll tell you what happened. When I was running my small computer company, later on when I was trying to fix it, one of the concepts I learned was referral marketing and business networking. And so I joined BNI at the time, Business Network International, which is the largest business referral organization in the world. And in that chapter, there was a gentleman who had a computer software company, computer business. And my focus at that time, my small business was focused on creating e-commerce websites, internet websites, back in those days. And he had a conversation with me. He said, I've got this referral for you, which is part of what the chapters do. And I took the referral and he said he had some feedback that the service I provided to his client, because I didn't know it was his client he was referring me to, was absolutely great. And he had a conversation and he said, Mac, I have all these clients who want these websites. And we're talking about in 2004 or 5, it's still, websites were still in its infancy. People had them, but it's not like we have it now and you can create your own. And would you be willing to service them? Would you be willing to help them? And I'm thinking, I'm looking for new clients and you're going to give me all these clients and I've got to look after them. And that's how it started. And so any business I went in after, and so I thought, if this computer company wants to give me all these clients, and it was all done on a handshake, nothing written. And what about the accountant? What about the lawyer? Do they have clients? Do they have similar clients that may need my services? So I started speaking to those type of people, and instead of advertising, I would get a lot of business through referrals and through joint ventures. But again, only with people that I had certain values that I've gone along with. Have I been stung in joint ventures before? Yes. And so I've got these 6 steps, which I can share with you in a moment, in terms of how do you create great joint ventures.
Yeah, but I love what you said about Code of Honor. So on this show, we've done over 250 episodes, including our No Bad Bosses, 50 episodes. But we talk a lot about values, company values, how you live those out, how you ingrain those in an organization. And I'm familiar with the term Code of Honor from the military.
Right.
But it really strikes me as you bring it up that a code of honor, I'm really like, wow, it's like a 2x4 against the forehead here, whack against the head. That's a much more full commitment. So when I think of code of honor, I think that I know there's one branch of our military here in the U.S. I don't know whether it's the Navy SEALs or the Marines, but it's like, we don't leave anybody behind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's this full in commitment that we're going to live out these values. And they're talking about them and they're living them day by day, being reinforced as teams and as a full unit. And that's much stronger than typically most companies approach their values. And I love the way you're extending it out and saying, hey, not only do we want these internally, but when we have a joint venture partner, any type of partner that we're working with, we got to make certain those values match.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, that's big.
And it was big lessons. And David, that I had to go through my challenges and failures in order to have these big lessons. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Isn't it wonderful how failures can teach us? Yeah. Hopefully they teach us. I had to repeat many of mine. So one of my jokes is that I keep submitting my thesis for my PhD from the School of Hard Knocks, but it keeps coming back that I need more work done. So those failures, those mistakes. Well, talk to me about how, when we're thinking about these joint ventures, these partnerships, what are the aha moments? What are the 6 steps? And one of the things I'll warn you in advance that I'm interested in is I suspect, because you perfected this system, that one of the things you do is you help people identify where it's not going to be a match early on. Because I teach hiring, and that's what I do with hiring. I say, what's the most important thing in hiring? It's to figure out if you're not a match early on so you save time. So your number one objective is save time. So I'm interested in that perspective as part of your 6 steps. I don't know whether you would have brought it up as a main point anyway, but
you hit the nail on the head. It's number one. So it is the first thing. It's the same thing. So let me break it down. Number one is what we call potential joint venture partner identification. Now, why do we say identification? If you are going to joint venture with someone, who are you going to joint venture with? There are millions of businesses in America, around the world. So what I say to people is the easiest thing to do is ask yourself, who already has my ideal clients? Yeah. And if, I listened to some of your podcasts and there was a lady talking about influencer marketing. I listened to another one. But clearly, if you know what your niche or your niche is, as you say in America, and you know which influencer or which company or which organization has your ideal clients already, wouldn't it be worthwhile to build a relationship with that person or with that company? And so one way to do that is, now you've identified them, is now to do something that brings you into their realm, into their world. Now, maybe make comments on their LinkedIn or whichever social platform they're in. Maybe send them a gift. And when they get a gift, they'll think, who is this? And you, in that gift, you write, hey, let's have a conversation. I've got something that could be of mutual benefit to both of us. So once you've identified them, remember, this is business, and you have an idea of where there's going to be a win-win. They're going to win, you're going to win, and the clients are going to win. But they don't know who you are, and they don't know if they can trust you. They don't know who you are. So earlier on, number one is find them, identify them, and then start building rapport. It's not about doing business straight away, building rapport. So my incident in the BNI chapter, this gentleman had watched me for several months before he said anything. He had watched me. He watched me the way I talk to people, the way I did things, the way I said please and thank you, the way I approached things, the way I got involved with the chapter, with the other people. And he said, can you look after my clients? Oh, my goodness. So building rapport, and that takes us back to values. The person you're trying to build rapport with, what are they saying on their LinkedIn or social media? Are they negative? Are they positive? Do they care about their clients? Are they a giver? You want to have mutual values. So that's number one.
Yeah, let's stay there for a moment. And I think it was Ashley Klein who was on the show who made that comment with, referral marketing or whatever, that you try to build a relationship. And I want to emphasize to the audience so that they don't miss it, that what I'm hearing you say, Mac, is you need to really kind of test drive these people. And one of the best ways to do it is you can read what they say on social media, but what type of people really are they? And one of the best ways to do it is to serve them. Like you talked about commenting on their social media posts. So you start to get some interaction. Maybe there's like this person who kind of vetted you for 3 months. He probably tested you with some, whether he was bringing forth stuff from his business or whatever, kind of seeing really what kind of person are you really when I get behind the mask.
Right.
Okay. Get behind the initial politeness and that type of thing. Who are you really? And I want to emphasize to the audience that as much as we want to save time, which was the point I brought up, you also don't want to go too fast. So if you spend 3 months, 6 months vetting, because you may find someone you want to go after attorneys, like, oh, wow, they've got a bunch of attorneys they're working with. And you just dive in and you're like, uh-oh, these are ambulance chaser attorneys.
Right.
And those aren't good attorneys to work with because they're moving from big wins to big wins. And sometimes they can't pay on time. I want the people that are doing the regular business, legal work, and because they're going to be better clients for me. So you didn't take the time to really work it out. I love what you're saying as far as really identifying who's got the market and then really getting to know them well enough. So you're going to make a good investment of your time. And that's one way I've found is the hard way is to slow it down, serve them in some way, interact with them in some way. Just like you said, you were giving away some of your coaching before you knew what coaching was. You got to know people. So sorry, I slowed it down, but I love what you're saying. Please continue.
Sure. Thank you. And so number one, potential joint venture partner identification. And number two, once you've identified them, then it's a case of now knowing how to contact them. So number two is contact that potential joint venture partner. Now, how are you going to contact them? We've already talked about using social media. You may even go and visit them if it's a shop or if it's an open place. You may want to send them some item that brings you to their awareness. You may just want to keep making comments on their social media, whatever it is, but contact them. Once they know who you are, arrange to have a meeting. That's part of the contact process. So having that meeting says, I have something that could be valuable for both of us. I'd love to discuss it. And so number three is now, once you've had that initial meeting and you've brought up your idea, hey, David, I know you work with this type of clients and I know you provide this service and I know you provide a great service. What you won't know is I do this and this is what I do, and then describe it all. I have an idea, and it's the idea I have that's going to make your clients very happy and also make you money. And I'm not doing this for nothing. Obviously, it's going to make me money as well. Are you open to have this discussion? Are you looking for new clients? Are you looking for new opportunities? But most entrepreneurs, the answer is yes. Now, if they're not doing this thing already. And so have that discussion. And number three is then you're going to create a compelling joint venture proposal. So whatever you've said, don't forget, this is not just one day to the next. This is a process that has taken you weeks, sometimes months, to get to the stage of now creating a joint venture proposal, a compelling joint venture proposal, one that is a no-brainer. You mean, Mac, you're going to do this for me, and this is how my clients are going to win, and we make money together. Yes, David. Right. So if it's a no-brainer and they can see that, I'll give you an example. I've done this so many times. Over the last 8 years alone, generated over $25 million on joint venture process alone, just not with any other form of marketing. And some of my partners, I've known them for 8-10 years, right? And new partners, I take time to go through the same process, follow them, have conversations, invite them for dinner or lunch or tea, whatever it is. Number four is now you've created this compelling joint venture proposal. You're going to meet up with them and present it. And this is where most people go wrong. And when I say present it, is you're going to formalize it in a document so they can easily read it. They can understand this is not just a handshake, but this is formal. And where I've gone wrong in the past is made agreements verbally. And the danger is this: when the money starts coming into play, some people have this amnesia. What do you mean? And they don't pay the commissions, or they don't pay their dues where it's needed. So make it formal. Present your joint venture proposal. This is what we discussed. This is how I see it working. This is the win-win for you, and this is the win for me. And number 5 is now you're going to close. If they agree with everything, you're going to close the deal. And that's like closing any other product sale or service sale. You're going to actually close it. They'll sign it. And then the whole thing starts at number 5. Once the deal is closed, now make sure you fulfill your side and help them to fulfill their side, making it as easy for them as possible. I'll give you an example. For example, we had a client who I took through this whole process, and she had an opportunity to do a joint venture, which she was stalling on. And it was a case where a company wanted to use her intellectual property, wanted her to present for 3 days. And she was resisting because she didn't know how it worked. She wanted them to pay her up front. But in the end, she listened to me. She did the joint venture. And then in a 10-minute phone call, I said, say this, because we teach these people in our program. In a 10-minute phone call, close the deal worth $40,000 to her for a 3-day program where she just had to show up, give her intellectual property, and she was astonished. Now she's gone on to use the same process to make millions. And so as I said, number 5, close your joint venture deal. Number 6, now you have that relationship. That first venture has gone well. That's what we want. Now, if it's gone well, can you repeat it next year? Could you repeat it 6 months from now? The answer is yes. So number 6 is just focus on maximizing the profits for both of you on an ongoing basis. So long-term relationship.
Yeah. So I have a few things I want to dive into on this. So, because I've been doing sales for 50 years. So I'm 65, started when I was 15.
Wow.
So, I'm not the best, but few things. And I know you're alluding to them, and I'm like 99.9% confident you're teaching your people to do this. But when you have that presentation about that joint venture, it seems to me, and you may have an example. Once again, I love your examples. You have to really do a good job of presenting the value for them and the value for their client versus being a little too anxious or too verbose on what's in it for you individually. So, and if you have specifics, like I noticed you have client XYZ that's on your website as a testimonial. I can see they're doing business this way. If they use our product, they'll be doing it this new way. And you can see the difference between today and where we'll take them. Would that be, do you agree that's going to be of value? Am I right? Is that the kind of the approach you take, or at least part of it?
Absolutely. In any sales environment, she's a coach. And one of the things that I was trying to get her to do is sell higher value products. And so she had a product which was, I think it was £99 a month she was charging in the UK. And then she had another product where she was charging £500 a month. And I said to her, look, well, this is what I said. Instead of focus, she said, I don't have this £3,000, £5,000 product. I said, okay. Do you know? So you remind me who your ideal client is. So she tells me all our ideal clients. I said, good. Is there an organization in the coaching field who has a higher value product? Because you haven't developed yours. I know you're trying to develop it. She said, yeah, there's a number. I said, could you go through this process and partner with them? And so now you can offer this level 3 thing that can service your clients. Do you think that would be useful to your clients? She said, yes, they would love that. So now she partners up with them. now able to sell, and they split 50-50 on this £3,000 product.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's there. And do you know what, David? 95% of small business owners do not do joint ventures. 95%. Large corporations are doing it all the time. And sometimes it's right in our face, but we don't cognitively get it. You know, whenever Pixar or Disney launch a new animation, what do we see with Coca-Cola? What do we see with, what's the other one?
McDonald's does a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
We've seen all of that. You know, the airlines are the same. You know, American Airlines, British Airways, they are part of the One World Alliance. Then you've got Star Alliance. Large corporations are doing this all the time. 95% of small businesses are not doing it. So if you're one of the 5%, starts using this marketing model, you're destined to win. But no, it's a long-term game, not a short-term game.
Okay, so I got another couple things. So first of all, did you recommend, like, there are certain situations where, like with the coach you just mentioned, she can pick up a new product, kind of just go with that and just roll it out. But are there other times where, when you're starting these joint ventures, it's in your best interest or the partner's best interest that you do a pilot first with maybe one client, two clients, three clients? Or is it always that you're just rolling it out carte blanche to everybody?
It really depends on the situation, and it really depends on the type of organization or the type of thing you're trying to sell. But it is always good practice to test. You know, so if you're going to do something, if you've got an email list, instead of going right across the whole email list and upset people, start off with a small number and see how that resonates. Yeah, definitely, there's nothing wrong with testing. I mean, you know, in marketing, it's always test anyway. We don't know what's going to work, but you test this. If it works, let's roll it out to a bigger part of the database. If it works again, we know this is a good model. So testing is good.
And a lot of times that test helps you refine the messaging so you can zero it in. Now, another consideration is that here you're talking about 95% of businesses, small businesses, mid-sized businesses, are not partnering. And one concern is how, and maybe this is where your coaching really helps them, is as they start identifying who can I joint venture with, that type of thing, they have to be really careful they invest their time in the right partner. And there are some partners out there that look like they're an ideal match. Like, you can go to some distributors. I've been part of the computer industry since 1982. You can go to some distributors and it looks like, oh, wow, these guys have exactly the match. They've got the resellers, whatever. They might be a match for the introduction, but they don't do any sales on your behalf. So I would assume your coaching also helps them understand, okay, when you partner with this company, you got to understand how much lifting you have to do versus how much are they going to do. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where you remember I talked about where the formal proposal comes into play. And it becomes clearly evident, David, in order for this joint venture to work, this is what I think you will have to do. Do you agree? Does that make sense? Are you able to do that? We'll support you. This is what we are going to do. So it's very clear that each party have got specific things to do. And so I'll give you an example where many times I've been asked to joint venture with someone, and sometimes it's a training that I've got to provide, or I've been invited to come and speak. And in the last, how many years now? Probably over the last 10 years, spoken in over, it's trained hundreds of thousands of people in over 50 countries now, 50 countries last count, and all over the world. And so they may have an idea. So I spoke in Vietnam. And when I spoke in Vietnam, this is a story. And I thought, I'm just going to come on stage. I'm going to give them value. I'm going to train them. I'm going to talk about business and wealth. And it went really well. The organizer came up to me during the last break and said, Matt, they really love what you're teaching. Can you offer them something? Can you sell them something? Can you I said, I don't have anything. And if I do, there's nothing prepared in Vietnamese. I don't speak Vietnamese because my training, they were simultaneously translating for me.
Yeah.
We talked about it. And they said, can you create something and we will partner with you to make sure that these people get it and understand. I went back on stage and I had something in my head anyway. And I said, I'm planning to come back to Vietnam and I'm going to do a 5-day training with this organizer. And if I offer it, I'll come back to Vietnam to teach for 5 days, how many of you would be interested? And I saw the hands go up. I said, oh my goodness. So that organizer trusted me enough that I would deliver. And that's what we did. We did something. I created it. It was a 50-50 split. Both organizations made a lot of money, and the students are very happy, even up to now. So it really depends what you are offering and what service or what product you're trying to sell.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the way you're really saying it's very important to get it in writing. And
yes,
the legalese is important, but I want to emphasize to people, based on my experience and what I've learned from others, as well as my own experience, when you have that in writing, it's really important that you're careful on the verbiage on how you get out of the agreement, because you will have an occasional situation where you need to get out of it. It's either just not working, not generating sales, so it's not worth time, or there's another issue. So it's really important. The most important part of the agreement, I would argue, is how you get out. And if you have some huge thing of legal fees, or if you have a formula where here's how we get out type of thing, it makes it can be very complicated, very onerous. And even though you put that in there, there can be a lot of debate. So I find that you either have to go with something that's a mediation type of thing. In the US, we have like a jams and dispute type of simplified process versus the American Arbitration Association. The other thing my grandfather taught me with real estate transactions, when you're buying real estate with somebody else, he came up with that at any time after a year or 2 years or whatever the time frame is, one party can offer to buy the other party out.
Right.
And the party who's receiving the offer can either accept the offer or may buy out the offering party under the same terms and conditions. Mm-hmm. And that forces both parties, you don't make an offer unless it's a fair offer. Mm-hmm. And he found, and I've had people that have used this, but it has never been implemented to my knowledge, but he did in real estate for decades. And I do love the simplicity of it and the way it forces somebody not to undercut somebody else, because then they're going to get bought out at the same price type of thing. But you got to find a way that's simple to get out.
Yeah, and you know, you. This is a key part of when I'm training on our millionaire joint venture program. And one of the key parts, actually, we give our clients all the documents, all the templates, all the agreements that they need. And part of that agreement, we say the reason why you have to have it in writing, have these agreements in place, and like you said, is there are going to be several incidences that you think, oh, this was good to start off with, but now this is what I'm seeing. And sometimes you see cases of non-payments. They were supposed to pay you this amount by this date, and it hasn't happened, and it's happened twice. Think, oh, non-payments. The other thing is skipping agreements, where someone would amnesia again, say, oh, I didn't realize that. I forgot about that. These are clues. These are signals, actually, this may not be a long-term relationship. And that's why you have to have these clauses in there, like you said, David. So skipping agreements. The other one, sometimes you realize that, oh, we started off on the same agenda. Now the money's coming in. We've got different agendas. You've got different agendas. It's not going to work. And then sometimes you'll realize at times, if you haven't built rapport enough, you may realize that you ended up with the wrong joint venture partner. This is not going to work, right? And then number 5, often it could be you've grown apart. You know, maybe you've been running this for 2 years, 3 years, but now the organizations have grown apart. and it's time to move on. So know when to kill it off. So in that agreement, if it's clearly stated, this is how we sever this agreement, then you all stand in good stead.
Yeah, and it gives you a much better opportunity to do it amicably, respectfully, thoughtfully, because you don't want to kill relationships, even if the other party's toxic in some way. Yeah. It's not worth getting into a battle. But Mac, this has been awesome. I feel like we're just getting rolling here, but how can people learn more about what you're doing, connect with you in some way? Where would they go?
Yeah, excellent. For the past 17 years or so, I've been training and coaching my clients, over 100,000 people in over 50 countries now to grow their business, typically growing between 20% and 200% in less than 1 year, specifically using certain strategies that they maybe never heard of. So if you're interested in growing your business, if you're not, don't worry, but you can just go to my site, which is my name, www.macattram.com, MACATTRAM.com. Reach out to me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been very great for the audience.
You're most welcome. Thank you for having me, David.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you liked the episode with Mac, hey, we'd love to get your feedback. Send us a note, make a comment, give us a rating. Encourage others to subscribe to the podcast. We'd love all that. Please don't forget our sponsor, Habitly.com, where you can take one habit that's a strength of yours and make it a superpower. Check it out on Habitly.com. Of course, you can do that with multiple strengths that you have, not just one. But anyway, Habitly.com. And again, thanks for joining us. Stay tuned. We have more great leaders coming on. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.